I am going to show you guys how to make something from my homeland of the United States of America, and it is indeed my favorite soup of all time. It's a bit of a tricky one to make here in Belgium because you cannot always find the main ingredient, but today I'm going to make New England clam chowder. This is a delicious seafood soup that has only one type of seafood in it, and that is clams. In Belgium, at least in Dutch, they'd be called cockles. So what I have in front of me is all of the ingredients that it takes to make my delicious clam chowder, minus the celery that's sitting in the refrigerator right now. I'm going to start with the most difficult of the ingredients to find. This is something I actually had to have sent to me from the United States, which is canned chopped clams in clam juice. We actually need the clam juice because it's what helps the soup to taste so much like clams. You can do this with fresh clams or cockles, which you can find on the coast of Belgium. You can also sometimes find them in supermarkets packaged like mussels. In this case, though, I wasn't able to find any today. I was able to find clam meat, so I'm going to add a lot of extra clam meat to my soup, but unfortunately, I won't have any fresh clams to work with today. And you can also make that clam juice by hand if you have clams in the shell and you're going to cook them. Maybe one of these days I'll be able to put up a video about how to make your own clam juice. The other things that we need for this soup, we need heavy cream, and then we also need milk as well. We need vegetable bouillon or stock. So this is my vegetable bouillon cube. We're going to need parsley. I cheated and I bought some that was pre-chopped today because it was easier to get to in the store. We need ourselves an onion. We need bacon. We need some potatoes. We need some butter. We need some flour. We need some bay leaves. And then some salt and pepper, and perhaps a little bit of cayenne pepper if we're feeling a little bit spicy. And then, like I said, I'm also going to chop up some celery to put in here. So we're going to get started preparing our ingredients, and hopefully our clam chowder is going to be super delicious today. So in just a second, I'm going to dice my yellow onion from before, but I just wanted to show you really quickly the only two cooking pans or pots that we need. I'm going to be using this frying pan to cook my bacon off, and I'm going to be saving the bacon fat because the bacon fat is actually going to taste really, really good in our soup. I am going to cook my bacon whole, and then I'm going to chop it up into little pieces and put the bacon fat and the bacon pieces into the only other thing I will need, which is a wonderful soup pot, because in that soup pot is where all of the magic will happen. So I'm going to let this pan preheat. I'm going to chop my onions, and I'll see you guys in a couple of minutes. So we are still waiting for our pan to preheat, and you can see here that I have sliced my onions beautifully and my eyeballs are stinging from it. I also remembered that we are going to have to prepare the potatoes, so I thought that I would show you this. Now I'm using much smaller potatoes than normal. In the United States we'd use these big old russet potatoes that are like this. It calls for 2 potatoes that are russet sized, so I'm going to use maybe 6 or 7 of these smaller potatoes. And I've got a bowl standing by here. Now, the recipe originally calls for us to peel these potatoes, but I love potato skins, so I'm just not going to do it. What I am going to do is chop these potatoes into about bite-sized pieces. They don't have to be perfect. They don't all have to be the same size. But what we want is a potato piece that's going to cook in a reasonable amount of time so that we don't have to have dinner in 5 hours, but not one that's going to disintegrate and become all mushy and yucky in our chowder. So here we have our very preheated pan. We are going to very carefully lay our bacon down in the pan and just let it sit because some of the fat needs to come off the bacon or it's going to stick. Now while this bacon is cooking, you'll notice here I've got some celery that I sliced up. Our potatoes are finished. And I put the celery in the same bowl as the onions. So we just have to wait for our bacon to cook down a little bit, to get nice and cooked through and delicious. Now, while our bacon is cooking, there's going to be one last step I need to take in order to be ready to start creating my soup. I need to take these canned clams and I need to separate out the clam meat from the clam juice. So I just have a measuring cup here. Really, even a drinking glass would do. And I'm going to use my can opener to open my can of clams. And you've got to do this a little bit carefully because you can already see liquid. These are full of clam juice, and we need all that clam juice to flavor our soup, so we don't want to lose any. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the top off this can, just like that, and I'm going to keep the lid in there, and I'm just going to press the lid down a little bit and pour, and that keeps the clams in. The other thing that's important to note is I actually washed these cans in my sink because you'll notice all my clam juice touched the top of that lid, and I certainly don't want yucky dirt or dust from the top of a can lid in my clam juice. Now what you're going to notice is, look at that, it's almost all the way down there. You don't have that much clam meat. That's why I bought the extra clams, is because I want a nice clammy clam chowder. So I'm going to pop open the other can. It's looking like our bacon is almost done, and then we can start making our soup. Let's check in with our bacon. It is looking very nice on both sides. So in just a second, I'm going to remove this. I do need to do a little bit of trimming of this line of fat here, because that's not going to be very tasty. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to chop up my bacon into small pieces. I'm going to add the bacon fat to my soup pan, and then I'm going to heat this up with a little bit of butter in the bottom as well to about medium heat, and then we'll actually be ready to start making our soup. So I'll see you in just a couple of minutes. The time has come to put together our soup. So I'm going to show you kind of in order each of the things that you're going to need. So we're going to start with our celery and our onion, and then we're going to move on to the milk and the clam juice. And now this is a lot more clam juice than you should have. We only got about 200 milliliters of clam juice from our 2 cans. I put another cup or 250 milliliters of water in there because I'm also going to mix in my bouillon cube, and I need a cup of that bouillon, so I just added my water to my clam juice to make my life a little bit easier. We're also going to need our thyme, and we're going to need 3 tablespoons of our flour, and then we also need off to the side our heavy whipping cream, our bacon, which as you can see I have now sliced into beautiful little pieces, and our extra clam meat and our parsley. So we've got everything kind of just around the stove waiting for us. So this had to do a little bit of preheating. This is a mix of butter and bacon fat. So we're going to go ahead and put in our vegetables, and we're just going to cook these until the onion is soft and a little bit clear. We don't need the pan to be too terribly hot. I've just got it maybe at just below medium. So we're going to let this cook for just a couple of minutes. Once the onion is cooked a little bit more, you can add your thyme. I don't actually have a recipe for this, but I'd say, I don't know, half a tablespoon or something like that. Maybe a teaspoon or 2. Really, I'm just going to sprinkle. But I want enough in there that I can give it a good taste. If it's been a few minutes and your onions are getting soft, then it's about time for us to add the flour. Now what we're going to be creating is what's called a roux. It's just a little bit unusual because normally a roux is just milk and flour and a little bit of butter. We've obviously got our vegetables in here. So I'm going to be using this whisk right here, and the reason I'm using this really cool little whisk with the balls on the end of it is because I don't want my vegetables to get stuck in a traditional whisk. However, even if you just have a whisk with lots of gaps in it, not like a really tight whisk, it's going to be just fine. So what I'm going to do is add my flour here, and I'm going to stir it constantly for about 1 minute, and then I'm going to add my milk and my clam juice and my water and my vegetable bouillon cube. So we'll start here. We're going to dump this flour in, and you want to whisk it all the time, and we're even going to just brown it a little bit. It's going to take like a minute. It's not very long. So you can start with your liquid in any order you'd like. I'm going to start with my milk, and it's really important once you add this to whisk, 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 because you don't want chunks in your soup. You don't want lumps. So we've got to whisk, 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 whisk. And this will keep our soup smooth. Now we can add the clam juice and water. That's this right here. And we're gonna whisk. And now we're not really in danger of getting too many lumps, but we are gonna turn the heat up just a little bit, maybe to just a little bit above medium, because we need it to boil and thicken. It won't thicken if it doesn't boil. So while it's thinking about heating up, I'm gonna crumble my vegetable bouillon cube into my soup. The other thing that we can do is we can add our bay leaf. And now we're just going to whisk while we wait for this to boil. So we've come to a boil. I'm reducing the heat just a little bit because this has already started to thicken really nicely. What we need to do is add our potatoes, and at this point we don't need to use the whisk. We can actually swap out to a spoon if we want to. We're gonna add the potatoes nice and gently, just like that. And then actually what I'll probably do is grab a lid and I'm gonna cover this soup and let the potatoes cook until they are nice and soft. And it's actually really important that we cover this because we don't want the soup to get any thinner or thicker. We don't want all the liquid to evaporate out. So I'm just gonna cover it and let it bubble just a little bit for about, I don't know, 15 minutes or so. So we'll see you very soon. I almost forgot. To go with my delicious clam chowder, I actually have some homemade sourdough just laying around, of course. One of these days I might do a sourdough video for you. But in the meantime, I just want to make some really nice sourdough toast. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to slice up my bread here. I'm going to toast this in my oven rather than in a toaster. I like oven toasted or pan toasted toast much more than I like toast from a toaster. We'll make about 4 nice big slices tonight. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to butter my toast and I'm going to sprinkle it with my garlic salt. And then I'm going to cook it under my broiler in my oven until it's nice and golden brown and bubbly. And it's going to make fantastic toast to go along with our chowder. So I'm going to get to work on this and we're going to check on our potatoes in about 10 minutes. We have returned. And it's looking like our potatoes are just about finished, but since I'm not quite done cooking yet, I'm still probably going to take another 5, 10, 15 minutes. You can kind of see off to the side all the different things I'm going to add still to this soup, but we are almost finished. And this is my seasoning stage as well, so I have some spoons here to do a little bit of tasting. First things first, I just want to make sure my potatoes haven't stuck to the bottom. This is really thick, which is good because we're going to add our last liquid. If you remember from the very beginning, we've still got heavy cream. So I'm just going to fish out, if I can, very carefully because they're hot, my bay leaves. Now, the first thing I'm going to add to my soup is actually the meats. Normally, you would just sprinkle this on top. We're putting it right in the soup. So in goes all but a little bit of our bacon. We will save a little bit to put on top. We're going to stir our bacon in. Then we're going to start adding clams. Now, all of these clams are already cooked, so I really only have to worry about making sure they're hot. Now let's add some heavy whipping cream. Now I have 2 200 milliliter containers here. I'm going to start with one of those containers, and if my soup is still too thick for my tastes, after I add that, then I can always add more. But there's no exact amount of heavy whipping cream that you add to this soup. It's however much you want to get a soup that you like. So for me, that looks really nice and thick. I think I'm going to add a little bit more heavy cream though, probably about half of this. So I'm going to add, in total, about 300 milliliters or so. And then finally, it's time to add pepper, garlic salt, and parsley. So I'll start with my parsley. About 2 tablespoons of this, but honestly, again, you add as much as you want to add. And we'll probably sprinkle more parsley on the top when it's ready. There we go. And then some garlic salt. And finally, some black pepper. I like to add a lot of black pepper. You can add as much as you'd like. And then we stir, stir, stir. Now is the time to give this a taste and see if you're happy with it. Now that's the stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cover this. I am going to let it bubble up just a little bit more and maybe cook for the next 5 or 6 minutes just to make sure my potatoes are nice and soft. In the meantime, I have finished my garlic toast entirely. It looks wonderfully golden brown and crispy. So we'll be ready to serve very shortly. It is time to serve our clam chowder. We have some absolutely fantastic sourdough garlic toast to go with it. It's pretty simple serving. And then you garnish it however you like. For me, I like to put on black pepper, a little pile of bacon in the middle, and a little bit of extra parsley. And there we have it. Clam chowder. Enjoy.